It wasn't queued up. It wasn't even, nobody even touched it when it started playing. But the first holy of that is W-H-O-L-L-Y. That's wholeness. So for anybody who is feeling that a portion of their being is not whole, anyone who is feeling that something about their life is not valued, anyone who's feeling that a dimension of their identity is not being honored, for anyone who is feeling that the presence of God is separate from them, I am here to tell you that you can release that thought, that there is no truth to it, and that everything that is happening is absolutely the conditions that we created in order for us to move into the next level of our greatness. Okay. I am going to ask you to do a couple of meditative exercises. The first one right now is I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to remember what it was like when you woke up that first morning of the first election of President Obama. I want you to remember the feeling that you had when you went about your morning that day. Got it? Now for me, I had a pep in my step. I mean, I was like feeling so good, and I was like running didn't drive, I wanted to walk. I was like running to get a newspaper so that I could see it in print. I was so relieved because I had the idea that because this particular event had occurred, that there was something about me that had been accepted. That there was something about me that had been exalted. That there was something about me that had been honored and acknowledged. And there was something about me that was absolutely placed in a position of respect. Now, I'm neither a man nor a politician. So neither one of those were the aspects that I was celebrating. It was my race, which is a very small aspect of my identity, but a very big aspect of my experience. Mm-hmm. And so what I do know is that even when I caught the idea of the theme for the day, which is a mind ruled by love, it was way before any verdict had come out. And so I am knowing the perfection of God in every single moment. Because our monthly theme does continue to be free to be me. All right. And to be free to be me means that I get to express all that I am. And I get to celebrate every aspect of my being. I get to know, as Ernest Holmes tells us, that the divine plan is one of freedom. The inherent nature of man is ever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom, because freedom is the birthright of every living soul. You are free to go to the store and get iced tea and Skittles. If that's your way of pursuing happiness, you're free to do that. The very March on Washington many years ago is an outpicturing of us standing in the truth of us being free to express our capacity to vote. And so as we stood together in D.C. before the statue of Abraham Lincoln, we were able to look in that pool in the corridor of the Washington Monument and be able to see the reflection of ourselves and people that looked like us. And when we were able to do so, we were able to see that there was such beauty, and that beauty didn't only come in our own individual beauty, but it came in the fact that we were together. Because we were together, we were able to appreciate what family feels like, what community feels like. We were able to feel the power of people united for a purpose, people who were united to stand in the truth of who they are, to absolutely claim their freedom. And what I know is that free to be is just a very wonderful place. You know, the free to be is just whatever you decide to do, whatever you decide not to do, whatever you decide to eat, to wear, whatever job that you decide to work in, whatever relationship you decide to be in, whatever you are, that you get to simply be. It doesn't require anyone else's approval. It doesn't require anyone else's validation. You are free to be you. Now I want you to turn within again. And I want to invite you to feel a time when you felt much grief. Maybe today, it may be a year ago, 18 months ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But the grief that comes to mind, do you feel it? Do you have it? Are you there? Think about what it is that you felt you could have done differently in that moment. Think about how you have been telling yourself that you should have shown up differently in that moment. Whomever it was, whatever it was, whether it was the death that occurred or the loss of someone or something that occurred. And I want you to be able to see yourself as whole right now. And to acknowledge that each and every step that you took was perfect for where you were at that time. That whatever it was that you did was what you had the capacity to do in that moment. So I'm inviting you to release any kind of self-disappointment that you had. I'm inviting you to release any kind of self-judgment that you had. I'm inviting you to release any kind of self-punishment that you engaged in, consciously or unconsciously. And I want you to know that all through this, you've been held and loved in an unconditional grace. As you return back into this room, I want you to acknowledge that you are perfect. And that's not simply some spiritual jargon. That's not simply a bypass so that you can't be present with facts. Because facts and truth are not the same. What I know is that a mind ruled by love sees things differently. A mind ruled by love has a lighter feeling about you. A mind ruled by love has a feeling of great freedom. A mind ruled by love stops judging other people. A mind ruled by love cannot judge oneself because one loves oneself so unconditionally that there is simply no punishing of yourself happening. Oh, we can get very creative about how we punish ourselves. We can punish ourselves by lashing out at our significant other. We can punish ourselves by engaging in an addiction, by using alcohol, by using drugs, by using sex, by using any manner of things, even the socially acceptable addictions like television and internet. We can use those things to try to anesthetize ourselves so that we can't feel the pain until something comes up that so brutally slaps us in the face like a simple verdict that we are unable to repress it, and that is okay. Because there is such a great anger that is going on and such a great fury that has been reactivated now. You are now being called to move into the next level of your greatness. You are now being called as we were called years ago when we stood in the Washington Square. That particular feeling when we were together as family, as community, and we allowed ourselves to feel the power of being together. And we were willing to demand a legislative process that honored our place in society. I received in my internet exploration, because I had a sense last night. I was asleep when it first came in, but I had a sense last night that something had shifted in the universe, and I proceeded to go and look to find out, was there something that occurred? And when I found out what had occurred, I realized that the whole meaning of a mind ruled by love now had a different dimension. And that dimension was not only something that I wanted to share about you, about the freedom that I gained by having a tapping experience earlier this week, when I was asked to think about the grief that I first felt in my life, and when I released that, all of the knots that were in my experience, all of the ways that I felt that I had closed my heart, all of the people that I had refused to give information to, I was free to give them because I felt that there was a place within me that could never be hurt, harmed, nor endangered, and so I wasn't afraid to be me. And so I'm inviting you into that. There is no reason why you should be going anywhere with your head hung low because you feel as though your presence is not honored. There is not any reason that you should not be able to look at yourself in the mirror and not see that you are a reflection of the divine in all of its wholeness, in all of its perfection. There is no way that you should feel guilty if you were a white person, that you should be holding all of the guilt for the white people of the nation. There is no reason that as a black person that you should be feeling less than whole because you are a teenager, or you are a black child, or you are someone who is of any hue in the African American race, and you are able to absolutely cherish the wonderful history that you have of Egyptian kings and queens and the wonderful power that has allowed you to be able to face down hundreds of years of slavery and disenfranchisement. I want you to know because there are so many ways that I have been disenfranchised. The men may know feeling disenfranchised because of being a black man in America. The women may know, whether black or white, what it feels like to be treated as a second-class citizen by being a woman. I also know what it means to feel like to not be accepted as a gay person. And so when they approved the total invalidation and slapping out and erasing this whole so-called Defense of Marriage Act, I felt numb in a moment, in a continuous moment. It's like, okay, now what? Okay, now that I'm free to love whomever I want to love in certain states, what do I do now? I think it must be something akin to what the slaves must have felt after the Emancipation Proclamation was declared, and during that whole Reconstruction period where we were trying to figure out what freedom is. What does freedom look like for me as a person who looks like me? What does freedom look like? And as we tried out our baby legs and we started to move forward and we started to try to do things differently and we dealt with the Jim Crow laws and we got past only having the jobs of being able to clean up behind other people, and we moved past the jobs that were subservient, and we moved into professions and we started feeling greater about our own sense of self. And as we moved into our different neighborhoods and started to build our capital, and as we moved into being active in our political conversations, and we decided to protest and march in force of our dignity, for we knew that we were citizens in a country that entitled us to vote. We moved forward into voting, and we moved forward into electing representatives as aldermen, as mayors, as senators, as congressmen, and finally president. And in that moment, we were then still wanting our president to somehow be this savior. You switched out Jesus and put Obama there like he was supposed to cure everything. And then you began to realize that he was a lone man that had asked you in the process of being elected how to help him change this country. And you were just sufficiently satisfied that he had been elected and decided that there was nothing that you really needed to do to help change the country, because after all, he was president and he needs to take care of it. It's not unlike this community. I can't run the projector, run the microphone, run the music, run the talk. This takes all of us in this together. We have the capacity to work together. And it doesn't have to be that every time you talk about people being united, that it's because somebody wants money. It's just because being united helps us feel our power. And so what I know about this new freedom that I have is that once I got a taste of what it feels like to be free and for my heart to be open again, then I'm not willing to close it so fast. I was asked by one of my ministerial colleagues to boycott this film Ender Game because this guy by the name of Card, who had written all of these books and was some kind of a whole enterprise, had all of these homophobic ideas and we should not support this movie. And then someone said, what if he changed his mind from the time he said those things? And I said, well, she brings up an interesting point, because it's possible that that happened because, after all, In 2005, our organization was fighting over whether or not to have a non-bylaw resolution to absolutely uphold and support the gay marriages long before it was popular. In this same moment, we had the leader of our organization in a black church with different interfaith congregations standing up for how to promote gay rights. So there has been a shift just in our organization as we identify within the last 8 years. And you couldn't tell me that I didn't notice the difference, because it was the first time that I had been in a conference, and it was in my hometown. And I got to be with my family and have my mama cook me breakfast and go to my conference with my colleagues in spirit. And I was at the top of my world when they told me that this organization that I was committing my life to was not willing to support me in one aspect of my being. 8 years later, we're having a different conversation, wanting to point the fingers at other people for doing the same thing that we did. So, start with forgiving yourself for the things that you've done. Start with forgiving yourself with the things that you didn't do. And then see how freed up you can be. Because I'm telling you, a mind ruled by love is not willing to fight anymore. A mind ruled by love cannot go back to being small. A mind ruled by love cannot be in judgment of anybody else. I'm telling you what I know from the core of my being. And even as I facilitated a visioning workshop yesterday morning and Friday night, I posted on Facebook, where are you? If you've ever been in any of my visioning courses, then you're knowing that the lowest level is to me, the victim. And that you have to release the blame and shame in order to move into that next level that a lot of new thought people get into and want to stay stuck in, and that's to it. Thinking that they can manipulate the universe. Thinking that they can tell everybody what it is that they want to have happen, or they can affirm this or make a statement of truth or do a prayer treatment or whatever the spiritual tool that they have in their box and make something change. And there's a certain amount of fulfillment to that, but it's limited. And unless and until you're willing to release control, can you absolutely be the vessel through which God expresses. And even that is not in tune with the wholeness of your being. Unless and until you can release any idea that you are separate from God, then you can know as me. And when you know as me, you're one with the one. And when you're one with God, you're one with everything that is. Every plant, every tree, every human being of whatever color, race, creed, economic status, you are one with all that is. This is why we have a community named the Wholeness Spiritual Center. It represents the highest potential of our being. And when we can acknowledge that it's possible, we can begin to step into it. And when we begin to step into it, we recalibrate the whole planet. I put out on Facebook yesterday, I just completed the second part of our visioning workshop. Did y'all feel the planet shift? If not, tune in. Because there was a shift that happens, and there is a shift that happens anytime you do your work in spirit. Anytime you're willing to release victim, control, and move into a surrendered state of being, you can know oneness, and you can be free. You can be free of anything that appears to stand in the way between you and your happiness. Continue to pursue your happiness. Continue to cherish your life. Continue to honor your life. Continue to celebrate your life. Continue to embrace your freedom. Continue to know that you are endowed by your Creator with certain inalienable rights that cannot be taken away, inalienable rights that cannot be given away, inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. You are entitled to that and so much more. Accept this as your truth. It is real. It is realer than anything that you'll ever see on television or on the internet or hear on the radio or read in the newspaper. It is the realest part of your life. The very reason that you have incarnated is so that you may stand in the truth in a way that you've never been able to do before in all the incarnations that you've ever had. This one is for you. Embrace it. Namaste.
Namaste.